Welcome to My Life Chassidus Applied, episode 494. A good net of Pesach. So this will be a special Pesach edition. Night of B'dikas chometz. We enter into the Chag HaGeulah, Tavshin Pei Daled. This program is dedicated in loving memory of Miriam Bas Eliyahu, Altei Salah Shalom, and merit of Baruch ben Yamin ben Menucha Lana, Yukusil ben Leah Rachel, and Rachel Bas Liba Farkash, dedicated by Pinchas Tadris ben Miriam and Sarah Bas Rachel Altes. It's also especially dedicated to our men, women, and children, our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land in Eretz Yisrael, Eretz HaKadosh. Eretz Asher Einei Hashem Elokecha Bo Mereishis Hashana V'ad Achrei Shana, with a particular, unique providence. God's eyes are focused on this land. So in addition to Hine Layonim V'Layishin Shem Yisrael, that the protector of Israel does not sleep or slumber, especially a place where his eyes, both eyes, are focused on all the time, that Hashem should protect the Eden completely, all the time, especially in the time of Shemilel Shemurim, B'chlal Pesach in general, but all the time, and should finally have complete nitzachon, success and victory, the release of all the hostages, untouched, intact, and the protection in every way of the tzahal, the holy men who are fighting on the front lines, who are Moshe Nefesh, giving their lives to protect the men and women and children of Eretz Yisrael. We know there has been an attack recently by Iran, unprecedented. Eretz Yisrael has done what it has to do. Hopefully he'll do more, do what it has to do, but the Eibishter should do his part. And just like in Mitzrayim, just as it was when we left Egypt, we saw, he showed us wonders, he will show us wonders now as well, as we march from this into the geulah, mitis v'ashlema. So the first opening of a program like this, a Pesach this year, is that b'chol derveder emdim aleinu l'chalasenu. But especially when we see it with our own eyes this past few months, starting with Shmini Atzeres Simchas Teda, the beginning of the year, now we're 6 months later, and going into Pesach, and the latest events. So it's a zman when we need special brachas and special tefillas. The Eibishter will definitely protect us, because Baruch Matzilenu miyodam, but not just Matzilenu, will be a complete victory, complete transformation, and we will go into the geulah. We will prevail. Prevail for sure we will. The geulah is for sure going to come. We want it to be a rega achas kedem leikvan afilu keherafai, and it shouldn't even take any moment, or even before we enter into Pesach, in these last 24 hours before Pesach, may we already have the geulah, and b'meila will be l'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. So that's a good way to open this special Pesach program, because Pesach is all about geulah. We know Geulas Mitzrayim is directly connected to geulah rishena, geulah rishon, geulah achrin, with the geulah achrena, with the final geulah, like in the verse I just quoted, and so many other verses. We had Geulas Mitzrayim was the opening that opened the tziner, the channel of redemption, with the geulah mitzvah being its completion in a permanent way. So they're very much connected. And that's why indeed you find that the Haggadah, the first half of the Haggadah talks about Yetzias Mitzrayim, the second half talks about the future geulah. Even before the second half, when we already begin the bracha, the last, before we go to Motzi Matzah, the end of Bogged, we're already talking about the geulah, and definitely afterwards. And of course in Pesach in general, you have the general, that the first days are connected more to Geulas Mitzrayim, and the last days to the Geulah Hasidah, especially Achron Shal Pesach. So we have Geulah all around us. It's the month of Geulah, it's the Yom Tov of Geulah. B'Nissan Nigalu, B'Nissan Hasidim Ligoel. In Nissan we were redeemed, in Nissan we will be redeemed. And it's called the Chodesh HaGeulah, the month of Geulah. So that's the energy of this month. And that's what we need most. There's Geulah Pratis, a Geulah from immediate challenges, both individually, collectively, and especially now in Eretz Yisrael. And then there's the Geulah Amitis V'Ashlema, which we call Geulah Shein Acharei Golus, a permanent redemption, where the world will finally realize its complete purpose. And we're told, we have been told, and we continue to be told, that we are on the threshold. Why it's happening? Why it's still taking time? So the Rebbe answered, Chaptak Akasha. The Rebbe could say Chaptak Akasha. We also still have a kasha. It's one of the 4 kashas, maybe it's a 5th kasha. But the point being is that just because we have a question, as the Rebbe once said about Emunah, question doesn't make weaker and the answer doesn't make stronger. And the whole yesod of Pesach was Emunah. This was from the Emunah of the Eden. So Emunah is such a fundamental element of connecting to the promise, connecting to the Haftacha, that we will be redeemed as we were redeemed from Geulas Mitzrayim in the Geulah Mitzrayim. So this, my friends, look at this as a general opening to our program here, and we're going to talk more in detail. Many questions have come in, both about Pesach in general, and especially in context of the latest events in Eretz Yisrael. So we'll break it into at least 2 parts, B'chlal Pesach, and then Pesach in context of Gaza and Iran. And hopefully we can cover as much ground as possible. So let's begin with, well, we have begun. Let's go speak more specifically, more details. The things, what does Pesach teach us today? So the first thing my first thing we spelled out here was that Pesach teaches us that God's promises are fulfilled. And just as it was fulfilled then, it took time, 210 years, exactly as Hashem promised Avram. And afterwards, your children, your descendants will go out with great treasure. Great treasure means physical treasure and spiritual treasure. They became a nation. From there, where they would march to Matan Torah and receive God's mandate. And they become the people chosen to bring God's message to the entire world. to the entire world, to be a light unto nations, and to bring the geulah, to transform the world, a very physical world, into a dir b'tachtenim, a home for the divine. As the story continues, that from Matan Torah they afterwards built the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary, and then ultimately the permanent one by his Rishon, by his Sheni, and it leads all to the 3rd Beis HaMikdash, Migdash Adnei Ken Yedecha, which will be a permanent Beis HaMikdash, and from there, light of the divine will transmit to the entire world, and the entire world will be a garden, a home for the divine. What a mission, to fulfill that mission. So Yetzias Mitzrayim, Geulas Mitzrayim, and Yetzias Mitzrayim is all the first step, with all the preparations before that. So when we come to Pesach, this is the first thing we need to know, that this is what we've been doing. Mitzrayim, meaning from time we left Mitzrayim, we're still going out of Mitzrayim, Mitzarim v'Gvulim, the limits and the confines and the constraints in every possible way, physical ones, emotional ones, psychological ones, spiritual ones, to march into the Geulah Mitzrayim, which is essentially the continuation and the conclusion of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Which is why we say by Matan Torah was like the edison, the marriage, but the complete culmination of the marriage, the Kiddushin, will be La'asad Love in the future, which is the near future. So that's what Pesach teaches us in general. But now let's go into specifics. What is the main theme of Pesach? And I'm going to be consolidating many questions. So if your question is not exactly read exactly as you wrote it, probably consolidated with other questions that came in, but I'm going to try to cover as many as I can. What is the main theme of Pesach? Okay, very general question. Main theme of Pesach, we say Zman Chedoseinu, freedom. It's like Sukkah is Zman Simchoseinu, and Shavuos is Zman Matan Torah, Zman Chedoseinu. Like we say, Yetzias Mitzrayim, Anochi Hashem Elokecha Asher Yitzisichem Eretz Mitzrayim. So the central theme is transcendence, in one word, to go out of all our limitations and confines, which, if you think about it, may be repeated many times, but if you think about it, it's this essential, fundamental, most greatest blessing and gift a person could have in life, that you're not trapped. Simple put, you're not trapped, not in your routines, not in your habits, not in your life, not in your obligations. You're not trapped. Many people feel, I'm trapped in my family responsibilities, work responsibilities, my marriage has its troubles, my parnos has difficulties. Everyone has their meitzarim v'gvulim. Everyone has their limitations. Pesach comes to tell us every limitation can be broken through. And Pesach, Yetzias Mitzrayim, opened that channel. So that's the first most important central theme. There are many detailed themes which we'll talk about. I'm obviously not going to go through the whole Seder here. It deserves its own many programs. But I will say, if you go to meaningfullife.com, we have, thank God, developed a full array of resources that can make Pesach, help make Pesach come alive in every detail. Both a breakdown of the 15 steps of the Seder, which is 15 steps toward freedom, and matzah, and the 4 cases, and the morer, and the kaida, and all the different aspects, the mitzvahs and the customs, all spelled out into a blueprint for discovering personal freedom, personal transcendence. So whatever challenge you have, whatever you fill in the blanks, your matzoh v'gvul, Pesach comes to deal with it. And as I said, if you want to go to meaningfullife.com, you'll find plenty of resources in that direction. You can even print out, we have a short, so-called companion to the Haggadah that goes through the 15 steps. Each step, in addition to obviously the meaning, the technical meaning, and the halachic and the legal meanings, also the spiritual and personal application. So please check that out. That can definitely be helpful. But we will talk about some of the things. So now that's the central theme. The person continues as a breakdown question: is it the joy? Is the theme of Pesach the joy of freedom from slavery, or the lessons in humility from eating the matzah? Or do these two themes somehow work together? So, firstly, there's more themes even than those two. But let's begin with that. Good question. In a way like Sur Merah or Asay Tev. The Sur Merah, the going out of slavery, the freedom from every form of slavery. Remember, slavery is not just being behind bars or being tied to shackles and chains. Slavery can also be, even if you're physically free, you can be psychologically enslaved. Look at to consider technology today. It's supposed to emancipate us, free us, communications with anyone, anywhere, any piece of information. And yet so often we find we feel addicted to these gadgets, to these machines. And the same thing with other things. We have a lot of prosperity and comforts, but you never see an addiction as high as today, whether it's physical addictions, psychological addictions. So freedom we need on every possible level, and that's definitely a central theme. But that is cleaning up our lives by getting rid of anything that can trap us. We'll talk about that more in a moment. Then there's the second half, which you clearly emphasize as well, which is the positive side. So it's not just not eating chometz. And chometz represents part of the Mitzrayim. Chometz represents the Yetzer Hara, represents all the negative forces in our lives. The ego, arrogance, the inflated ego. Matzah is the antithesis of that. Same ingredients, but it's not allowed to rise. So matzah and chometz are the same letters, mem tzadik, but the difference is the hey and the ches, which also look alike. 3 legs, three branches, 3 parts, 3 lines. By the ches, it's closed. It's like a closed box. And the hey, there's a space between the left leg and the top. That left leg is everything. It's the space, it's the pause of humility. It's not all closed, you're open, like the spout in a kettle. And that allows the air and allows fresh air and allows another perspective. So matzah is humility, bittul. Humility should not be confused with weakness. Humility is one of the greatest strengths in our lives. The ability to put your ego aside and allow in a new perspective, a fresh air, a fresh way of looking at things, which is essentially what Pesach is. So a lot of our trappings, the Mitzrayims, are our own mind, in our own minds. We feel we're creatures of habit, victims of circumstances. So Pesach tells us you're not. And that's the first way to get out of slavery, is to get out of the slavery of your own perspective, of your own limited perspective, of your baggage, of your past experiences that may trap you, your prejudices and biases, and of course your ego. So matzah is the other side. Matzah is the humility, the bittul, that allows you to do that. So there's definitely both, and they both work together exactly as this questioner writes. Now, are there more themes? Of course there are. That's why you have many other aspects to the Haggadah, including all the 15 steps. We'll talk about some of them, not all of them, but we'll try to go through, but that to answer those questions. Okay. Being that such a big thing is, especially now, or literally tonight, is Bedikas Chometz, the night of cleaning out and finishing the process of cleansing our homes and our properties from every crumb of chometz. Every crumb. I remember as a child, I used to always wonder, my mother, my grandmother, the cleaning, as you all know, anyone growing up in a home. And then you learn chassidus, you understand why they so obsessed, consumed with finding every crumb. But it's not just every crumb of bread, it's every crumb of ego. You want Pesach to be completely clean in that sense. And that prepares us as we get rid of the chometz. Now we prepare the home, as we all feel when you enter into Pesach, a certain, even begashmi is physically clean, new clothing, everything is fresh, like a new beginning. So someone asked a question, interesting question. Is it necessary to cleanse our bodies? Why don't we do a thorough internal cleansing of any chometz left in our bodies before Pesach? More detail, is it necessary to cleanse our bodies of excess chometz by doing a high colonic treatment to remove impacted waste from the intestines, or visiting a dentist erev Pesach to do a cleaning to remove any chometz stuck between the teeth and gums, or is it just a hiddur mitzvah? It's a good question. If you're cleaning every part of your home, so why not absolute total cleansing of your own body? You know, and we know there are all kinds of things. There are fasting exercises. There are things called the total cleanser. Total cleansing. So al pi Torah, al pi halacha, and even al pi frimisur sadin, yes, you're supposed to definitely be clean and brush your teeth and obviously do whatever you can to eliminate any chometz, that's obvious. But no, you don't have to cleanse your intestines. You don't have to do a master cleanser, as they call it. Now, why not? Because remember, chometz itself is not a problem. It's only a problem the 8 days of Pesach. The day after Pesach, the day before Pesach, or the time when before we're still allowed to eat chometz. Chometz is a kosher of food. Not only kosher, we eat challah on Shabbos, we make brachas on it. So it's not fundamentally that in Pesach, it becomes absolutely awesome. So the fact that they still have chometz in your body, besides the fact that we already, after 6 hours, generally speaking, is considered to be completely eliminated or digested, and actually that's why one of the reasons we don't begin not eating chometz by night, we already begin in the morning, late morning, is already the time we don't eat any more chometz. But even if you just say there's something, so the Eibishter, remember, created your body and he can take care of whatever he needs to take care of. We have to do what we have to do in a normal and balanced way. So I don't even know if it's a matter of a hiddur for somebody to do that. I've never heard that someone has to go through a colonoscopy. Well, that's a test, but I'm saying the same process of emptying out all your intestines and so on. I haven't heard that. Maybe if somebody has anything, maybe somebody wrote about it. I don't even know if, as I said, lefnimisur sadin, but it makes total sense because it's not something we don't have to. It is. You'll say you go to the extremes to find. Well, to find in your home, it's a total cleansing as much as you can. But within your own body, the body at the end of the day is the gufa is a part of what Hashem created, and the fact that we have within us, we have. I mean, that either Hashem will eliminate or it naturally gets eliminated. The main thing we have to focus is on the psychological, emotional chometz, the ego. That is up to us. And that's what we need to focus on most. So, that's how I would explain this. If somebody has anything to add, by all means, these are my initial thoughts. And you find other examples of it also, that we're expected to clean out things that are outside of us. You can't go ahead and just take your whole body, even if you do all the cleansing in the world, have you really eliminated every aspect? But I think it's a good idea to brush your teeth, yes, and to do whatever you can to clean. I mean, people take a shower. The fact that you may have some chometz, that's not the reason we take a shower. It's also going to the mikveh. B'chlal, mikveh is not a matter of cleansing, but mikveh is a matter of eliminating any spiritual impurities. And in this case, also spiritual chometz impurities, talking about metaphorically speaking. Okay, so let's now move to the next question. What is the best way to run a Seder? Well, this is a good question, both in our homes, for our families, or guests we may have, or if you're running a public Seder, You have many guests. So there's a lot of different aspects. So overall, I will just say a few key points, and then we'll go into a little more details. A few key points. Number one is you want to make the Seder come alive. It shouldn't be mitzvah sanoshim alamod, mechanical. It shouldn't be something that the children say, oh, getting bored, or just funny or humorous, but it should be something that's memorable. And the more you make it, more meaningful you make it, the more memorable, the more you're doing, which is the vigada talavincha. Not just telling your children the story, but also that they should remember it. It should be unforgettable. And the best way to make things unforgettable is firstly engaging everyone, and secondly to talk about it in relevant terms. Make sure it's relevant. Now, I've run many Sedarim, and I've seen different Sedarim ran, and many people get lost, especially if they're not familiar with it. They get lost and they say, when are we going to eat already? Or they don't say it, but they feel it. And I'm not saying you could have a very beautiful Seder with the children asking questions. It's lively. But making it meaningful is like the beginning of the evening. Whoever's hosting can say, this is a special moment. Manishtana, why is this night different? Not just we're going to do different rituals. It's an opportunity to become different, to become a new person. And we're going to go through many steps. And it could be a very comprehensive experience, but it could also be a very basic one. So you ask people to think, just throwing out a suggestion. Define a Mitzrayim of your life. A matzah of a gevul, something you want to change. Some trap, something that keeps you locked, something that you want to break through. Could be a bad habit, could be an addiction, it could be a fear, or fears, or insecurities. I've done this, tremendous results. You make people feel what we're going to experience is your journey. And the Alter Rebbe says, every generation, every day, a person has to see himself as if he's leaving Mitzrayim. So how do you do that? By identifying a Mitzrayim in your life. And now let's start the Haggadah, and I'm going to go through the 15 steps that are going to tell us how to do that. The engaging part is get people to share. They don't have to share all their secrets if they don't want to. To share a thought. How do you personalize it? What is Kaddish? You're sanctifying. Kedusha is Havdalah, you're separating. Sanctifying the wine. You're separating. Urchatz, washing. It's a form of cleansing. You have examples of bittul, which is tefillah, when you dip with a tefillah with a vav, with a vase, not with a tfei. Tefillah, twice that word tevel. First the karpus and zalzpas, later the modern charesis. The breaking of the matzah. What is a matzah? I mean, the themes are multiple. Especially when you get to Magid, that's the whole point, is to speak. So they're saying the Haggadah, by all means. Maybe have people read different parts of the Haggadah. Maybe translate it, like read it in English. Share a thought. Obviously, you have to keep control of the time as well, because it can take a lot of time if you have a lot of guests. But the key is, again, engaging and relevant. And if you think about it, that's what Magid means. Haggadah comes from the Magid, Vigadata. It's a story, it's a dialogue. It's relating, it's a narrative. Questions and answers. But instead of turning it mechanical and by rote, we're saying the same avodah me'ayinu and the same firkashas, make it personal. Engaging and relevant and personal. That's the general approach. Now, if you have a lot of guests that have never done Pesach, you should focus on them. Obviously, if you have your children, you have to balance that. But have the children also focus. You know, everyone say we're going to have the children ask the question, then you can have every person's inner child ask the question. We all ask the questions. I'm just giving you some thoughts, but be creative, be innovative. And you can think about it. And as a matter of fact, if you have children and family, you have also guests, you could have your family plan it. Maybe sometime tomorrow, right, but throughout the day. I know there's not a lot of time, but if you have a few minutes, you could sit with your children and say, how do we, let's make this really exciting. I mean, there's so many ways if you really apply yourself. But that's the key goal, that when you go away from the Seder, you feel, something. I came away with something. Now, of course, it goes together with all the mitzvahs and the minhagim and all the beauty of it all, the Shulchan Aruch, the meal, and so on. All adds to it. But the more you engage, the more relevant, the more powerful the experience will be. So in that context, someone asks, is it better to have an enjoyable experience even if we compromise some of the more stringent details? I don't know what you mean by compromising the stringent details. I don't think you have to compromise to make it enjoyable. You can do other things. The key is what you're focusing on. You could just focus on the details and forget to make it personal. But Pesach is intense, and so on. So yes, someone who's eating matzah, especially with the shir, it's a very intense experience. But the key is to make it alive for the people who are either never experienced it before, who have experienced it but don't find it relevant. So someone asked like this, what would be a more meaningful Seder experience? A 3-hour Seder starting on time at 8 p.m. and going through all the required rituals in a fun and loving environment with enough time for a relaxing meal and great conversation with family and guests, or a long drawn-out Seder with anxiety and tension and arguing for a half hour before each ritual to make sure everyone does it mahadrin and mahadrin, and no time for Shulchan Aruch because it's long after midnight when you finally reach Vaitzi Matzah. She goes straight to Afikamen and drag the Seder on until 5 in the morning because you spend 4 hours yelling and threatening severe punishments to your 3-year-old extremely tired child who dared to put his head down on the table for a moment because it's late at night and he's tired. Okay, you really brought two very, it's a loaded question, obviously. No one's going to argue the latter is the way to go. But unfortunately, there are homes, and I have experienced it myself, that do a Seder can look like that. That's exactly what I was trying to preempt. So I wouldn't put these two together because one is not you could still do a Seder properly and be fun and enjoyable. Yes, anything that's slept out like that, and it's all negative. Again, unfortunately, there are tables like that, and children have memories, terrible memories, where everything was about the insisting on doing this and not doing that. There was no feelings of love and kindness and beauty and gentleness. But that's part of a dysfunctional home. That's not necessarily a Pesach thing. Just Pesach, it gets all magnified and amplified because of Pesach's all its strict laws. But that's his Bechlal. I can assure you a home like that, probably Shabbos doesn't look so great either. So the point is that Pesach can be a nightmare for some, and it has been. I know people who have a difficult time when it comes to Pesach because they were traumatized by the Seder. And some were even abused in the sense where if they didn't say the Fir Kasha exactly right or didn't answer the right question or didn't present right, publicly were humiliated. Or worse. I don't want to go into all the nightmares. So I'm trying to preempt it all by saying that's not the way. It's obviously not the way. That's like the ultimate Chil Hashem, the ultimate desecration of Pesach. The whole Pesach is meant to be a freeing experience. Freeing your spirit. Not one of bullying and one of intimidation and judgment and anger and punitiveness. It's the exact opposite of Pesach. Pesach the Eibishter showed chesed. Nigla le'em melech malchem lochem HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'golam. Is geulah, freeing a person. And geulah doesn't just mean stopping someone out of a prison, as I said. Geulah means also emotionally, psychologically free. So the irony is, again, another irony where you're trying to make people free in a very enslaved type of way. So I don't want to elaborate how that is off and how the dissonance and the inconsistency and complete, how can I say, complete the absolute opposite, diametric opposite of what Pesach represents. So let's talk about the positive. How to bring it into a geulah way that you feel like a melech, you feel like a king, like a queen, like a prince, like a princess. Not just physically, but also emotionally. That's the whole point, to lift people up. And it's pretty easy to see by a Seder if people feel uplifted or not. I was once at a Seder, unfortunately, I was a guest. It was a very unhealthy situation. There were guests there as well. And there was a lot of unhealthy stuff going on. And the guests were appalled, to the point that it was very hard, a lot of damage control that was necessary. But it was all due to people, to parents, the people running who were just not healthy people. And they brought all of that. They weren't even half aware of what they were doing. But again, let's talk about the positive. So that's the key point. And therefore, absolutely. I mean, we once had guests at a table. I remember in my parents' home. They never did Pesach. And it was like you could see they thought, okay, we'll have finally the karpas that have a meal. No. They saw the matzah, they saw the wine. And everything was so slow until... So my mother took them into the kitchen, gave them a nice meal, and didn't make a big fuss about it. And explained to them, well, yeah, we explained, but sometimes people just, for the first time, it's a certain culture shock. So you have to also be flexible when it comes to this. You want to make an experience that's positive. You'll say, you can't do Shulchan Aruch. So he didn't do a formal Shulchan Aruch. Now, if some of you find that to be a problem, so don't do it if you feel uncomfortable with it. I'm sharing it anyway. My point is, it's important to be, God wants us to be light-spirited, not to be frozen, not to be verquetscht and locked in, verknocht and verquetscht and locked in and saying, this is about expansiveness. Expansiveness is also an attitude. And those people had a beautiful experience and they came back again, and today some of them are completely Shemer Shabbos and Shemer Pesach and so on. I don't know, some people, I've seen people also leave in the middle of a Seder. They just felt too late. It's already 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. So you have to be wise, use common sense, the fifth Shulchan Aruch, and you can get things done, tremendously beautiful things done. This is in general an attitude to everything, but especially Pesach when things can be so, as I said, amplified and magnified. Okay, next question. Why are we constantly reminded that we were slaves in Egypt and idol worshippers when we're not supposed to remind someone of their past sins? Okay, good question. So let's read the full question. It goes like this. It's considered an aveda to remind a convert that his ancestors were idol worshippers. I think in that case, the Torah is also giving a broader lesson that when someone or a group of people have made positive change in their lives, it's inappropriate to remind them of their past and make them feel bad. So why are we constantly reminded that we were slaves in Egypt instead of the Torah emphasizing all the good things we did after the era when we were in Mitzrayim? Okay. It's even like you could say a halacha question. We say clearly, avodim Mitzrayim, and aviseinu evdei aved zara hayu. We say all that. So I am talking now. I have not seen a specific answer, even though maybe there's something in my supraconscious that I'm just not coming to mind. But my first instinct in hearing the question, the answer would be, the goal is not to remind us of our pasts. The goal is to remind us of the transformation that took place. So when you go to somebody and say, you're a Baal Tshuva, I remember what you were like back then. Or a ger, the same thing, a convert. Or anyone else. Or someone, for example, God forbid, had an accident. You remind them of something that happened to them, an injury that happened to them. They may still have scars from it. It's just not the right thing to do. That's not what we're doing, Pesach. The exact opposite. We're saying that though we were trapped in Mitzrayim in slavery, and though our grandparents, meaning Terach, Avram's family, where he originates from, were pagans and Evdei Zara, look at what happened to us. It's appreciating where we came from. It's not a reminding us, hey, you were Evdei Zara. And that, indeed, that actually helps us to help appreciate the light, because we know the darkness where it came from. And that's why you'll see that anyone that feels, you're reminding me that we were in Mitzrayim, it makes me depressed. I've never seen that happen. Someone says, if you're still in Mitzrayim, spiritually or psychologically, that's a problem. That's what we're here for, to get out of that. And that's part of the story, that we know that was there, and we have it today in spiritual sense, and this is a night, a Seder, to help us free ourselves. The whole Yom Tov is a Yom Tov to help free us from that situation. So it's also context, how you say something. If, for example, talking to a Baal Tshuva or talking to a ger or someone that went through a difficult thing, and the contrary, and you say, look what you are today. You're such a role model. And please share your story with others. That's an inspiration. So then the darkness, you're not just talking about darkness. You're talking about darkness that brought you to such a beautiful new beginning, a new life. So I'm trying to keep it in some order here. Someone asked the question, I'm not sure if this is the right order, is the Egyptian exile a deeper concealment than that of the tzimtzum harishon? Or how is Geulas Mitzrayim a deeper concealment? I think this is based on something I may have said in previous classes or previous program. So the tzimtzum harishon, just for the record, is the root of all mitzarim v'gvulim. That God, in order to create existence, concealed his divine presence, consciousness. Not the divine essence and not even the essence of the divine presence, but the very revelation, like a teacher who draws back and recedes his brilliance in order to leave space for a student. That's a tzimtzum harishon. So Chassidus explains that everything began with that. That created possibility for independent consciousness. Independent consciousness, in order to be able to build a dir b'tachterim, the fulfillment of God's plan, that's necessary. But it could also lead to other undesired consequences. When a father conceals himself from his child, the child can think, oh, the father is no longer here with me, mistakenly. And that independent consciousness can lead, that diversity can lead to divisiveness, which can lead to all the other problems. So indeed, Mitzrayim, in a way, is nishtalshel, evolved from the tzimtzum harishon. But of course, it's a more intense and worse manifestation, because the tzimtzum harishon is a divine instrument. God, hein gvur Esav, chose to conceal that conscious presence with a purpose. Tzimtzum b'shvil hagilui. Mitzrayim is already when human beings took that concealment and took advantage of it and abused it and misunderstood it to the point that they said, you know what? The Jewish people are a threat to us. We'll enslave them. So all atrocities, all wars, all inhumanity, from the worst to the more subtle, is all rooted because of the tzimtzum harishon. So the tzimtzum harishon becomes now the root of problems that are far deeper than the original concealment. Had all the Chava not eaten from the tree of knowledge, the tzimtzum harishon would have been, but it would have been a healthy tzimtzum in order to create an existence and then make a home for God in this world, in tachtenim, which is possible only through a tzimtzum, the tachtenim, the concealment of the divine. But when the other direction, they transgressed, and like we learned in the beginning of Basal Legani from Shir Hashirim Rabbah from Medrash, so the Shekhinah that was there revealed became concealed, more to the second heaven, the third heaven, all the way up to the seventh heaven, and until Avraham reversed the process and began to shine the light, until 7 generations from that, Moshe Rabbeinu took the Yidden out of Mitzrayim, Matan Torah, the Mishkan, bringing the Shekhinah back to earth. And that's our job. So Mitzrayim is definitely you can call it a severe manifestation and consequence of the tzimtzum harishon. It's somewhat, if you want to use a little more niggladika terms, when the Rambam asked the question, there's the famous question, Hilchos Tshuva, since God told Avraham Avinu that the decree that the Eden will be in Geulas, in a land that's not their own, so why were the Egyptians punished? It was all predestined. So there's 2 answers, the Rambam and the Raavad. One answer is because Hashem didn't say which mitzvah should do it. He said it'll be in a land that's not their own. Then every mitzvah had free will. Also, they did a lot more than what God wanted. God said they'll be in a land of not their own. He didn't say how intense and severe the slavery should be. They added a lot more of their own, and that's what they're responsible for. So you see from there that there's the basic concept of Mitzrayim, the need to go into a land that's not your own. Yosef heard Mitzrayim, Yosef went down. But when Yosef went down and he lived in Mitzrayim, it was actually the best years for the Eden, especially the 17 years, the last 17 years of Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov, the 17 best years, Gematria Teiv, as the Baal HaTurim says. But then Mitzrayim became far worse. Vayokam melech chadash, a new king arose, and he turned everything around and turned it into a severe slavery and bondage and inhumanity and genocide, etc. Rachmana litzlan. Lo meirei lo mazeh. Why are you allowing bad things to happen to your people, to this nation? As Moshe said, until we went to Geulas and Geulas and Yetzias Mitzrayim. Okay. Next question. So I'm going to try to really move along here. So much to cover. Oof. Okay. Why are we not all wealthy today as the Jews were when they left Egypt? If the holiday of Pesach and the entire month of Nissan represents not only a collective redemption from slavery, but also an individual redemption from limitations and constraints, why are some of us so bogged down with financial problems that we still feel like slaves? Where are our miracles? Okay, well, we all know, yes, Mitzrayim opened up many channels and many miracles. And we are a people today here, which is itself a miracle. The mere fact that we exist, let's not underestimate that miracle. Why we are not all blessed in every possible way, or at least in a revealed way, because we don't yet have the geulah mitzrayim, because there is still work to be done. It's not all automatic. But there are tremendous blessings if you think about your life that Geulas Mitzrayim bring us till this day. The fact that some things are not yet complete, it's like there we see, God forbid, there are people who are injured, people are hurt, children that are born not healthy, and so on. It's because the job isn't finished, and we still have to do work, and we don't know God's mysterious ways. That's the most basic answer. So we have to always look at the miracles that are in our lives and try to see what we can do. But let's go to the other questions, because I think this one will be answered by the next few questions as well. The next one is, well, if Geulas Mitzrayim can be a microcosm of going out of limitations and challenges in our personal lives, what is something specific we can do to use the energy of Pesach to help resolve financial problems and increase our parnasa? Or another way of putting it, how can we access the energy of Pesach to resolve our challenges and constraints, financial and otherwise? Many questions came on about that, and that's what I was just consolidating. So let's go back to the very concept of Pesach. Pesach is a unique energy of cheruseinu, like we were speaking, freedom, transcendence. But then we have to make a keli. What's the keli for Pesach? Is the mitzvahs of Pesach, starting with matzah, starting with all the mitzvahs that we do, and the minhagim, and the rabbanon, and the minhagim we do at the Seder. And throughout the whole Pesach, that's the keli that we make. So the more you make a keli, which included, of course, our preparing for Pesach already a month before, you learn Shleishim Yom Kedem Achag, you learn, but that's already passed. Everything you do that prepares you, that primes you, becomes a channel for these blessings. But the blessings are there. But like all blessings, they need containers. And that's the bottom line answer. What are specific things? To have a mindset of harchava, of expansiveness, a mindset of cherus. That's why we recline when we eat, during parts of the Seder, when we eat and drink certain things. We dress in that way, we behave in a way of a malka, king and a queen. You bring in an attitude that is opposite of cherus. That doesn't mean the Eibishter can't break through anyway, but you make it more difficult. So it's our mindset, it's our heart set, it's our psychological state of mind that is critical in this process. And that's why I was talking earlier about how important how to do the Seder is so critical here. Okay. And the more you focus on, I gave some examples with matzah, magged, and other things, the more you focus on these things that make them relevant and engaging, the more the keli is going to draw down more and more brachas. It's as simple as that. That's what we were told. Asus latata brings an asus delel. Do we have kayach Pesach, and can the Eibishter do it even without? Of course he can. But we're talking about what you can do to maximize it. Okay, so this leads us to a few, I guess, tongue-in-cheek questions, but it's worthwhile reading anyway. Why not? Why are matzos and Pesach food in general so expensive? Is there a spiritual reason for this? Is there a spiritual reason that shmur matzah cost over $20 a pound? It would be much easier for us if it was only $5 a pound. Then we wouldn't have to choose between having shmur matzah and paying our electric bill on time. Okay. And then a follow-up question, is that why we call matzah the bread of the impoverished? Because it's so expensive, it depletes your bank account to indigence levels. Well, I understand, appreciate the question, and I think price gouging on Pesach is not appropriate. I'm not sure what can be done to stop it. Pesach, people feel the need, they must have certain foods, and there are certain justification for certain increases, but I don't think they're all justified. And I think people are trying to cash in inappropriately, and I'm ready to say that. I'm not pointing any fingers, I don't know exactly who what, I think it became part of the culture. And ultimately we are cooperating. Look, when people go to Pesach programs, God bless them, they can afford it, great, but it's not cheap. So of course vendors are going to take advantage as much as they can. Is it appropriate to do so? No. So I don't see a spiritual reason at all. The idea Allah nizik fa nigzim in hashamayim, that's not our job. The Rebbe once said that people charge more for houses. They say because Allah nizik, the person who's paying has to anyway do that, or else I wouldn't be able to control his life. The Rebbe did not accept that. It's not a justification for a vendor to charge more, because if you don't charge more, then maybe he won't have to pay more. So I don't think that's the job of the vendor. And after the fact, I'm sure the Eibishter will repay people for the paying for a mitzvah and so on. But there's no justification, definitely no spiritual reason, and I'm not going to justify it in any way. So that's the bottom line regarding that. Okay, so now let's go to the next question. This is a repeat of the previous question, but I'll read it anyway. The Torah says that we left the exile of Egypt physically wealthy, and one of the ways we became wealthy was collecting all the gold from the Egyptian chariots, and the Red Sea crashed down on them. Basically, Geulas Mitzrayim and Geulas Hayam. Two ways we got wealthy. It also, when we left them, we deserved them more, and we deserved even more. And then after the parting of the sea, when the Egyptians drowned. It also says that everything that happened during Geulas Mitzrayim will repeat during Geulas Mashiach, but on an even grander scale. The Rebbe has said many times that the time of redemption is here. So my question is, why isn't everyone in the community physically wealthy? Or is the actual redemption not here yet, Chaz v'Shalom? So it's a similar question like we asked before, and the same answer. The answer is that when the geulah did not yet come, and b'meila things are not as we would like it to be. We still pray and we still hope. And yes, many ways we are far more prosperous and wealthy than our parents and grandparents were. Just compare the standard of living we have today to what was going on 500 years ago, 100 years ago. But it's still not complete, and therefore we still pray, and that's why we need the geulah. And we're close to it, and I think the comforts that we have are a taste, a taimer chaim zachu, of what will come in the geulah. So that answers why are we not wealthy today as the Jews were when they left Egypt. Okay, similar question to before. Another question, next question. What do we have to do to earn and deserve the geulah today? What can we learn from Geulas Mitzrayim in this regard? In the month of Nissan, we experienced Hashem making miracles for us during Yetzias Mitzrayim. But these miracles didn't come for free. The Torah teaches that we earned the redemption from slavery because we didn't change our names, our clothing style, Leshinu Shmam, Leshinu Levusham, and our language. In other words, even during the tough times of slavery, we proudly walked around and identified as Jews. So how much more so today, since in addition to us proudly identifying as Jews, there is such a worldwide increase in Torah and mitzvahs. So therefore, we have definitely earned and deserved the geulah of Mashiach. So what do we still have to do to earn and deserve the next stage of Mashiach, which is the physical Beis Hamikdash? So the answer is exactly the same thing: the pride and the Emunah, Ge'en Yankov. Today, unprecedented, we have an opportunity to make a Kiddush Hashem. I personally have never been as proud to be a Jew as today. Precisely because we're being attacked. And precisely because of the anti-Semitism. Now more than ever, we have to stand up and proactively demonstrate to be proactive Jews. You want to know what now we have to answer the question, why do we need the Jewish people? Why do we need Eretz Yisrael? Because we brought God's mandate to the world. Every cherished value that every human being on earth values and cherishes was brought because Avram, Echadai Avram, taught Lasis, Doka, Mishpat. And the Torah gave us these laws. The Shev Mrs. Bnei Neach. This is what brought civilization to the world. We have to stand up and be proud. The wars that are being fought is not just to fight a war to don't kill us. No, because we have an important contribution, a vital contribution to make to the world. So that's one of the first things we can learn from Pesach of what we need to do today. And when we do that, the world respects. And that's part of bringing the geulah. That all the nations will see, based tefillah kol ha'amim. This house, the Beis Hamikdash, will be a house of prayer for all nations. To be a ner lagoyim, a light unto the nations. That they should see the wisdom and the values and the morality and the ethics. So that would be the first thing I would say. I'm sure there's more to be learned, but that's suffice for now. Many times the Rebbe would send out a letter before Pesach, and one of the things he would often write was his wishes for blessings for freedom from anxiety, material and spiritual, and freedom from anything that would distract from doing Torah mitzvahs wholeheartedly with joy. What do we need to do to make a keli for these blessings so they can manifest in abundance in our physical existence and in our bank accounts? So I'm reading a question that really different words was read before, and answered it. The keli is everything, our mindset, our behavior, the mitzvahs, with more passion, with more chayis, with more vitality than ever before, especially this year with all the challenges that are out there. Okay. There's so many more questions, but I want to move to the second half, because simply we're going to run out of time here. So let's talk now about what can we learn from Pesach about the war with Iran and Hamas. Now we all also know that Hamas and Hezbollah, however it's pronounced, and many other, Syria and other events are proxies of Iran. So now Iran's direct attack on Eretz Yisrael, Hamas and Iran, is part of an extension. It's not new. It's a new development. So let's see what we can learn from Pesach. So let's go over some questions in this regard now. And I will have to leave the other questions for another time. So an interesting question somebody asked. Which was a bigger miracle? Being saved from genocide at the hands of the Persians on Purim, or at the hands of Pari and the Egyptians on Pesach? The Persians, of course, is connected to Iran. Pesach is connected to Mitzrayim, is connected also, you could say, to Gaza. I mean, you could say Gaza is also connected to Iran. Anyway, point being is, Purim and Pesach, I don't know if you can make this comparison. Two different types of geulah. We know Purim was more Islapshus b'derech hateva. Pesach is a Nes Geulah. You need both. So I think that's why we have both. A misma geulah legeulah, especially this year, we see that the month of Purim, the geulah of Purim is mismach, right? Immediately is followed by the geulah of Pesach. So they both come hand in hand. I don't know if talk about bigger miracle, because both of them were terrible. The exile. Yes, Haman would have been one day, wanted to create total genocide. In Pesach it was more prolonged, the Mitzrayim, Geulas Mitzrayim. And there are differences between them, but also similarities. So instead of looking at it, which was worse, which is a bigger miracle, but thank God both are miracles. And both give us koyachas today, no matter what situation, and whether we need more concealed in teva or a more open miracle, that's what we have. Purim offers one set of miracle, Pesach another set of miracles. So with that, let's go to the next question. What can we learn from how Moshe Rabbeinu dealt with Parei, from the way Moshe dealt with Egypt, how we should deal today with Hamas and Iran today? Moshe dealt harshly with Mitzrayim and sent them 10 plagues that crippled them, while today's leaders in Israel responded to a barrage of Iranian missiles with a lame fireworks show that did no damage. And now they're not only laughing at us, but they're also laughing and mocking Hashem. And that is not acceptable. So I don't want to pass judgment on what Israel did. I don't know the cheshbenis, what they did do, what we really know, what else is coming. So it's not necessarily the time for that. But let's just address the general issue. Absolutely. When you're dealing with enemies, appeasement is not an option. You know, America has its interests and elections, and I don't know what Biden is thinking. But Israel has to protect itself. It's a very existential issue for Israel. With Hamas and Rafah and finishing Hamas, and the fight in Gaza. The same thing with Iran. But again, we shouldn't be the ones that are developing strategy here. If you talk about the general attitude, Moshe, the Ge'en Yankiv, you stand up and you see a Jew being hurt. That's what Moshe did. It says Moshe, when Vayifa Moshe Vayar Keinish, and he killed the Mitzri. So many lessons we can learn from Moshe. Being Ish Elikim, especially the pride, and above all to protect people, not do anything due to political and other calculations. The most important thing is to protect your people and show strength. That would be the first and most important thing. So instead of talking about the details, that should be the general attitude. Good. But let's go back to talking about what happened with the Iranian missiles. So here's a few interesting things that people wrote. What is the best way to thank Hashem for the miracles of saving Israel from the Iran attack? Here's someone wrote like this. Dear Rabbi Jacobson, when October 7th happened, I made many complaints to Hashem, and I said a lot of nasty things because I was angry that so many innocent people suffered. But since I'm an honest and fair person, I want to acknowledge the huge open miracles and thank Hashem for protecting innocent people from the criminal Iranian missile attack. I want to publicly say, Hoidu LaHashem Kitev Ki Le'elam Chazdeh. It seems Hashem has two main ways to get our attention, through some adversity and pain, or through miracles and joy. There's an old saying that you catch more flies with sugar than salt. I just want to remind Hashem of that saying. Please, no more pain and adversity. You can accomplish more by reaching out to us with kindness, joy, and positive miracles, especially the biggest miracle of ushering in the era of peace and prosperity through the full revelation of Mashiach. Have a good Pesach, everyone. Okay. I read it exactly as it was written. So now let's go back to the question, what is the best way to thank God? What is the best way to thank God for the miracles of saving Israel from the Iran attack? I think it's important for everyone individually and as a group to say thank you, because in our daily lives, when someone does a big favor for their neighbor and the neighbor doesn't say thank you, the next time around the person may not want to repeat the favor thinking it's not appreciated. I don't speak fluent Hebrew and I don't know all the official prayers. My personal idea was to gather some friends with our musical instruments and dance in a circle while chanting and singing thank you, God, for protecting Israel. You love us and we love you. If the rabbi who gives the Sunday night class can make a suggestion for a more official thank you prayer, it would be appreciated. And to whomever reads these mails, thank you to you and have a happy Passover. So I actually spoke about it last week, that there are the Hoidu LaHashem Tehillim Kapitlach that you could say. And when you say Bechlal, different acknowledgements and Todah, thank you. We spoke about the lesson from Chizkiah HaMelech, the need to say praise. Absolutely. But here comes a follow-up and says, when we say Hallel during the Seder, can we have in mind the miracles of being protected from the Iranian missile attack? In addition to the requirement to say Hallel for the Nissan of Pesach, can we also be grateful and acknowledge the miracles of being protected from that attack? The answer is absolutely yes. So we don't have to create new prayers. Just use those prayers, and that should be part of the kavanah. Okay. So now another question the other way around. Someone asks like this. Let's pull up the question. Should we avoid celebrating the deaths of our enemies, learning from God, rebuking the angels for singing when the Egyptians were drowning? If Hashem was angry at the angels who were cheering and singing when the Mitzrayim drowned in the Yamsuf, are we supposed to derive a lesson from that when justice prevails and the Hamas terrorists get blown up, we are not allowed to take out our tambourines and dance and sing to celebrate Hashem protecting us? So there's a certain element of that. When our enemies fall, do not celebrate. Celebrate the victory. You don't have to celebrate their deaths. You can cry for the fact that human beings or savages have fallen to such a level of behavior like that nature. When the Eden said Oz Yosher, and some people ask the question, how could the Eden sing praise and the angels were rebuked? The Eden's Oz Yosher was thanking Hashem for saving them. In it, they include that the enemy was destroyed. But it's not about celebrating the vanquishing of an enemy. It's about our victory. That's what we should celebrate. And celebrate that good prevailed over evil. And hopefully forever. So you have to know what you're focusing on. It's not about gloating. It's not about putting in the face of our enemies. It's sad what happened. Look at how they behave when they kill. We're not them. We're not going to revel and celebrate in the streets when we see someone die, even if it's our enemy. But we celebrate and thank Hashem with humility. We're humbled by the chsadim that Hashem does for us. That's the Jewish way, that's the Torah way, and hopefully the whole world would learn from that as well. Okay. Next question. What benefits are the prophecies if they're vague and cryptic? So last week I spoke about bogged and bogged, and some say the verses in the Nevuah that talk about bogged and bogged connected to events today. We don't really know whether we can interpret it that way, but someone asked the follow-up questions: what good are our books of prophecies if the prophecies are vague and uncertain? There's so many prophecies about bogged and bogged, but we still have no idea who exactly they are and what we are supposed to do to defend ourselves against them. The very obvious answer is this. The Rambam says, the end of Hilchos Melachim, he talks about Mashiach, that the things we know for sure, we know for sure. And the rest we don't have to speculate. The Nevuos were said, so firstly, for those that need to understand what they mean, they understand what they mean. Secondly, overall, we can derive from them that the end will be good. It doesn't necessarily mean we need to be parkinzach and trying to figure out every prophecy exactly where it applies. Some things are very open, and some things authorities tell us. When the Rebbe tells us this medrash or this pasuk applies to a particular situation, we can rely on that. But it's not our job. It's not a job just to find it. The point is really how it affects us, that we should know that Hashem watches over us. And there are many things that are predestined that there would be wars and there would be challenges, and that the end will be in the tzachon, and the geulah will come. So these are signs for the geulah. So you have some of them are very clearly connected to events today, and those that are not, they're not. That's not the job. It's not the Torah way. Tomim tiyem Hashem alekecha. Our approach is to follow Torah and mitzvahs, not to look for prophecies and hints and so on. If something comes up and someone mentions it, and it adds in Yiras Shamayim and adds in your commitment and intensifying your Torah, learning Torah and doing mitzvahs and tzedakah and tefillah and davening and so on, by all means. So there are many things that are pretty obvious and some things less obvious. So that's in general the gist. Okay. Next question. Can we give tzedakah on the condition that the hostages be released? Can we have in mind, when we give tzedakah, that the tzedakah is conditional upon the safe release of all of the hostages and the restoration of peace and security? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, about tzedakah is the only mitzvah Hashem says, "B'chanuni na b'zeis." Test me with this. And if a person gives tzedakah in order for his child to live, so he's hachyeses nefesh ani, by giving life to a pauper, by a poor person, by giving them tzedakah, al tanai, on condition that my child should live, it says the only mitzvah you can make such a condition. So absolutely. And I would go further. As we sit by the Seder tomorrow night, and the night after in outside of Eretz Yisrael, to keep the kavanah in our kavanas, the Geulas Mitzrayim of all pidyon shvuyim, mater asurim, absolutely. It's part of what Pesach is about. We're all in one boat here. It's not just them and us. They are part of us and we're part of them. So anything we can do in that regard, absolutely. And that should also include even those that are, well, for sure the hostages, but also those that are on the front lines, the families in Eretz Yisrael, and everyone anywhere in the world should all keep in mind. Another question someone asked, is it possible that our prayers for the hostages are being blocked, and in general for Eretz Yisrael, because of our own iniquities? Is it possible many of our prayers for the hostages have been blocked or diverted because some of us have the status of being sinful? Would it be beneficial if we purified in a mikveh and then daven for the hostages? Anything you can do that purifies yourself, teshuva, mikveh, is always good. But to say that our prayers and so on, we know today that you don't feel a Seder and so on, is not necessarily a condition to daven and pray, especially when people are in danger. But obviously, the more you do, the better it is. That's the simple, short answer. And finally, someone asked, should we accept teshuva from the Hamas terrorists? Well, let me read the full question. If the Hamas terrorists apologize and do teshuva and sincerely study Torah and want to convert, are we required by halacha to accept their conversion, or because of the evil they have done, halacha would allow us to reject them? Let's not jump the gun here. No pun intended. One step at a time. If the Hamas terrorists would lay down their arms and completely surrender unconditionally and return all the hostages, and then furthermore change their constitution and change their whole attitude, there'd be a ceasefire immediately. Let's start with that before we go deeper than that. If they can do that, then we can say, okay, then let them start doing teshuva for what they've done. I don't think we have to jump from one extreme to the next. Let's begin on a very practical level. That's the first thing we require. And that's what I want to say about that. They want us to become gedim. First of all, we dissuade gators. Second of all, are you going to trust them? Are they all suddenly going to become gedim? Let's begin, as I said, step one at a time. Okay. We have a few more minutes here, so let me just choose. Let me see if there's any other question that I think I can. Someone asked the question, maybe we'll conclude with this, with two questions. Why do we say that the generation that left Egypt had great Emunah? So the question goes like this. Why is the generation that left Egypt considered to have great Emunah? They saw great wonders and miracles. Of course they had Emunah. Perhaps true Emunah is when you don't see big miracles. Well, they had great Emunah. After, remember, they went through who knows what. 210 years of a bitter gulls. And they maintained their Emunah. It wasn't easy. Bavei Kosher, they couldn't even listen to Moshe. But think of that. They were in a concentration camp for generations, for over 2 centuries. And yet, there were things they maintained and held on to. That has to be honored. B'schus, especially the Noshim Tzidkonius and their Emunah. Nigla v'senim Mitzrayim. And that's why we evoke, we want to learn from that Emunah. V'iminu b'Hashem, b'meisha avdei. And we want to draw, these are our ancestors. So I wouldn't dismiss it. They saw miracles, yeah. We see miracles and you see Emunah is not always that easy. What we have to learn from is how to have Emunah today. Whether you see a miracle or you don't see a miracle, and we do see miracles today too. To hold on to Emunah is critical. Emunah is the key that opens up doors. So we say in V'hisha Amda, and throughout the Haggadah, verses that talk about our Emunah and our B'tachon, it's a vital component in the process of bringing geulah. In the Emunah Mashiach, in Mechakalei, waiting for him, as the Rebbe brings from the Chidah and others, that alone, the Shuoscha Kavinu Kol Hayem, that hope, that Emunah, that itself speeds up the geulah. And that leads us, I'll conclude with this next question. Someone asks, can Rabbi Jacobson, there was the question, let me find it, so many pages here. Can Rabbi Jacobson please present a synopsis of a Pesach maamar? So there are many powerful maamarim. I'll choose one from V'nocha, Tovshin Chav Hei, Achron Shal Pesach. It's a Mugadika maamar today. It also was adapted into a Sicha, Shmini, Chelik Yud Zayin. One powerful Nukudah, where the Rebbe speaks about Geulas and geulah. It says Adira B'Tachtenim means that the Dira, the home for the divine, is in the Gidre Tachtenim, in the very essence and personality of this world. We don't want to annihilate or eliminate or in any way compromise this very world. So the question is, Geulah and a Lakus is the opposite of Tachtenim. Tachtenim is a concealment of a Lakus. So where do you see an Olam comes from the word Lashon Helam, the world itself, its very definition, its identity, is concealment. So where do you see in that concealment becomes a dira? It's eliminating the concealment. And the Rebbe's answer is so powerful, but also extremely relevant. He says concealment has the tchuna, the personality, the feature, that when something is concealed, it motivates you. It builds up a longing, a thirst. When things are revealed, you can take it for granted. A famous Torah of the Baal Shem Tov, Ansam l'cha nafshi, kam l'cha psari. Eretz tziyah v'oyev, a thirst in this very arid, dry, parched land. And then came ba'kedesh chazisicha. So the Baal Shem Tov says, what's the cane? That so too in chedesh, in holiness I shall see you. So most people teach that from a state of tzama, then we go over to a state of being in a beautiful place where we'll see God. So he says, Cain is from the word halavai. Halavai. May it be that I should, when there's giluyim and see godliness, it should be with the same passion as when I was thirsty. When a person is not thirsty, they take for granted drinking water. So the Rebbe explains the helam itself of this tachtenim, of this world, is a keli talakus, because it evokes the deepest yearning. A very central theme for the Rebbe. He said also Shani Rabbe Mem Dalet in different words. He said Asara B'Tevis Mem Gimel. The idea of why at times it doesn't make sense that the geulah didn't come yet. It's Hepech HaTeva. Why would there be Geulas? The Rebbe says because maybe that's the only explanation. Because if there'd be any good reason, you wouldn't really cry with an emes. So we need a total helam to evoke that deepest passion. Thank God we've gone through many, many halamas and gone through them. I mean, to say, thank God, not the halamas, thank God, but the revelations. Now, finally, with these last steps, may this last helam and 30 years from Gimel Tammuz evoke that deep, deep passion. No complacency, no apathy, no indifference. And that was tremendous passion. So now there's a wake-up call, a real wake-up call here in Eretz Yisrael, even everywhere, that passion should finish the last element of Helam. We should demand and say we must have the geulah mitzvah vashlema. And that itself should evoke and bring the geulah mitzvah vashlema even before Pesach begins. Everyone should have a kosher and freilich in Pesach, a real geulah, pratis and a geulah klolis, personal and global redemption. Eretz Yisrael, emo faralmo, total victory, just like Kimei Tzeis Eretz Mitzrayim Aren and Reflois, and march into the geulah, into Yerushalayim, that when we say L'shon Haba Yerushalayim, it won't be Haba, it will be this year. B'mheira will be Ameinu Mamish, today Mamish, on this day of Erev Pesach, the birthday as well of the Rambam, as the Rebbe emphasized. We began a new cycle in learning the Rambam. And should be only geulah And Moshe ad Moshe lekom kamesha, Geulah rishon, Geulah achron, the geulah mitzvah v'ashleima al yidei Mashiach tzidkenu. Everyone have a wonderful geulah, a kosher Pesach and Pesach, a wonderful geulah dika Pesach, and right into the marching into the geulah mitzvah v'ashleima. Next Sunday will not be a program due to Chol HaMoed. Actually, it's due to Chol HaMoed and Yom Tov. Sorry, it's due to Yom Tov. But we will resume after Pesach. I'll see you then. And that will let it be a program that will be only about geulah, because we'll already have the geulah. This has been My Life Chassidus Applied, 8 to 9 p.m. Sundays. As I said, not next week, but the week after. A guten Yom Tov.
This program is brought to you by My Life Chassidus Applied. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at chassidusapply.com/donate.